Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Tony. I am Susan Beyer. I'm the Executive Director of the Allen County Public Library, and it is such an honor to welcome our former Director, Jeff Krull, back to the Allen County Public Library, this time as a published author to Single Wing, a story of boyhood, friendship, and football. Single Wing is available for purchase tonight and also can be borrowed with your ACPL library card, although there might be a hold list on it, So it is a happy accident that this event was scheduled during National Friends of the Library Week. The purpose of the Friends of the Library is to support and promote the Allen County Public Library and assist the library in carrying out its mission. Can I ask any members of the Friends tonight to raise their hands? I see our esteemed president, Mr. Mike Horton. Awesome. Thank you so much. Since 1981, the Friends of the Allen County Public Library have made significant contributions to the steady growth of the library and its services to the community. The Friends, along with the ACPL Foundation, launched a website this week at supportacpl.org. At their website, you can learn about both organizations, you can join the Friends, and you can make a donation. At the reception in the appropriately named Jeff Krull Gallery tonight, after the program, there will be information about how to join the Friends. And Jeff is generously donating all proceeds from tonight's book sales to the Friends. Let's give him a round of applause for that. Thank you, Jeff. Before our speaker comes to the stage, I want to acknowledge that we have many ACPL retirees with us tonight. Could you raise your hand if you are a retired ACPL employee? Okay, keep them up high. Clap, yes. Now, anybody who worked with Jeff during his tenure at the Allen County Public Library, raise your hands up too. Jeff, look at all that love and respect out there tonight. Now it is an honor to introduce you to the man of the hour, Jeff Krull. Jeff was born and grew up in North Tonawanda, New York. He graduated from North Tonawanda High School and went on to receive a bachelor's in English from Williams College. After a short stint working for the phone company and a try at teaching, he earned his Master's of Library Science degree from the University of Buffalo, and he started his career as a librarian and library administrator. He served libraries in Buffalo and in Ohio, and he served as the executive director of the Allen County Public Library from 1986 through 2014. He is now retired and splits his time between Fort Wayne and Florida, where he spends as much time as he can on the beach. Can't blame him. He volunteers for nonprofit organizations that promote education and public service. And our moderator for tonight is Steve Miller, a senior librarian with our Information Services Department who has worked with ACPL since 1990. So please join us on stage.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you also for spreading the word amongst a number of organizations and groups around town. I appreciate that very much. A number of other thank yous here to get started that made this night possible. Beth Boatwright, our Director of Community Partnerships. A few weeks ago, months ago maybe now, when I first saw the article in the local paper that Jeff had written this book, I immediately emailed Beth and I said, we've got to get Jeff back here for an author visit. And she said, "Are you volunteering?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And I envisioned this night exactly like it's happening, so I appreciate being able to do that. Aja Michael Keller, Kara Stevenson, Phil Sharpley, and the rest of the marketing and PR team, thank you for all your efforts. Leanne Burr and the rest of her event staff for all the logistical setup for tonight. Norm Compton and Access Fort Wayne, they're recording the program this evening. Nate Bernard, our main library manager, I went to him early on. He had a number of good tips and advice of doing a program such as this. Lisa Wilger and Kaylin Iska, fellow librarians here, helped with the reception setup in the Jeff Krull Gallery. And thank all of you for coming. It does feel a little bit almost like a homecoming game, or if Jeff was wearing a yellow jacket, it'd feel like a Hall of Fame introduction ceremony. I don't know. So I thought there was maybe a 50-50 chance that oh, and thank you, Jeff, for being here mostly. Yeah. I thought there was a 50-50 chance that Susan might end her introduction by saying, "Are you ready for some football?" So she did. But are you ready for some football? So the book is entitled Single Wing. What does that mean? So we're going to the locker room here, And not to insult anyone's intelligence, but we're going to plot out a little bit of a typical football setup. So you've got the linemen. So you've got a tackle, a guard, a center, a guard, a tackle, a tight end. You've got a wide receiver, that's a terrible W. And most importantly, you've got the quarterback, all right? The key position, maybe the glamorous position in sports. So that, it's quarterback is calling all the plays, looking over the defense, trying to decide what to do, whether they're going to run, pass, whatever, and then you've got a couple running backs. So we've got 11 starters. And so you've got your defensive guys as well. I won't write all 11, but that's where the expression X's and O's comes from. And coaches spend tons of time plotting out plays like this, and looking at film, and then plotting out plays. We're going to send this guy here, do this, do that, whatever. So that's more or less a lot of games now. You'll see different formations. Guys are always moving around. But this is just to understand. Again, quarterback gets the ball from the center. That's the key thing here at this moment to understand. And Jeff is going to explain. Here, I'm going to wipe this off.
Okay. What
a single wing setup is, and it's a little bit different. So.
That's okay. We're getting better. Okay. This is going to be the center. This is a guard. It's an end. Over here we've got a guard. Got a tackle. Another tackle. Now that's unusual because usually you have center, guard, tackle, end. The single wing offense, you got an inside tackle and an outside tackle. It's all overweighted this way. And here's your end. Now the backfield is the key thing in the single wing, and that's why it's important in the plot of this book, because the narrator, who's kind of me but not really, you know how that goes, the narrator always wanted to be a quarterback. Always wanted to be a quarterback. He watched the New York Giants on TV, and he watched Y.A. Tittle and take the snap from the center and go back and pass. And that's what the narrator wanted to be, a quarterback. He gets to high school, and he finds out that they're running the single wing offense. In the single wing offense, fullback is here, tailback is here, wingback is here, and where do you think the quarterback is? Here. Never touches the damn ball. Never gets his hands on the ball. The quarterback in this offense is a blocking back. The center takes the ball and in a typical play, let's say snaps it to the tailback. Quarterback goes out here and blocks the defense. The tackles are out there blocking. Fullback's out there blocking. And the tailback is running up through here, and you're basically trying to just blow the defense out of the water. And that's the basic strategy of the single wing. And so that we wanted to show you this because, like I said, if you think you want to be a quarterback like Y.A. Tittle, you don't really want to be doing this because all you're doing is blocking. You don't have to get your hands on the ball and handing it off and going back to pass and all that kind of stuff. So that kind of sets the, is that good enough?
Yeah,
for, okay,
yeah.
That sets the groundwork a little bit. Any questions?
So, single wing, was that always the title of the book in your mind as you were starting this?
No, actually. The title of the book that I had running through my head for a long time was TNT. TNT. That stands for Tonawanda, North Tonawanda. We were from North Tonawanda. And the big game at the end of the year, always the last game, was the TNT game. And it had that suggestion of explosiveness, dynamite, TNT. And the title was in my head before the plot, really. I just thought, I want to do something with this rivalry that we had, something that meant a lot to me and to a lot of the people, I mean, everybody in town. And actually, when I started working on the plot and writing the book, I had that as the title, but I knew I couldn't use Tonawanda, North Tonawanda, because it's supposed to be a novel. I don't want this to be a memoir, because I'm going to put stuff in there that I don't want people thinking I actually did. But I still like the TNT idea because of that explosive thing. So I came up with a couple of names for the town. It was going to be Tannersville and New Tannersville. And I actually started writing the darn thing with those names in there. And I'll talk to you later about how you actually get a chapter or 10 chapters written. But as I got into it a little bit, it really started to dawn on me, no, this is way too literal. This can't be TNT. If I want this to be a novel, if I want it to be sort of roughly based on our towns and our rivalry, that's fine, but it's got to be different. I got to go beyond this thing. So that's where I came up with the idea of I needed another big rivalry, and I thought, well, it's a little corny, but we'll have Bell Island and Ganaway, BIG game, the big game. And so that became the names of the two towns, and Single Wing became the title because this was so central to the whole thing about the coach who was getting out of date, running this offense that nobody else was running anymore, and he was starting to decline. The team wasn't winning like they used to. This is the kind of stuff that I was thinking about in terms of generally about the plot. I didn't know exactly where I was going to go, but that's where I got started. If I start rambling,
Okay.
tell me to stop.
So a couple questions about you yourself. What position did you play?
I wanted to be quarterback.
Did you have a choice in that matter?
This is something in the book that's pretty accurate. It pretty much reflects what happened to me. I went out for quarterback, and I did think I was going to be like a Y.A. Tittle, and discovered that's not the way we do it at North Tonawanda. So I tried to become a blocker. I tried to learn that, and I did play quarterback with freshman football, JV football, and then my junior year I was a bench warmer, second string quarterback. And I did look back at some of the game films, and we didn't run this. I mean, in the novel, I really make a big deal out of this. I think it's not historically totally accurate because looking at those game films, we were running some other offenses too.
Yeah.
But for the book, this was
So you told me before that Y.A. Tittle was your favorite player. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, Y.A. Tittle, high tops.
Yeah. And so I was familiar with who that was, but I'm a librarian. I can't help myself. I went and looked up some stuff about Y.A. Tittle. And, if I don't have it to show on the screen, but if any of you, if you Google image search Y.A. Tittle, almost assuredly the main picture that's going to come up is this picture of Y.A. Tittle after a big hit in the end zone, on his knees,
Right.
blood coming down his bald head.
Yeah.
He should be my favorite player as well. And just with his head down, it's one of the most iconic photos in NFL history. It really
Yes,
is.
absolutely.
And so I looked up. He suffered a concussion and a cracked sternum from that hurt, and still played the rest of the season. And the other thing I thought was interesting was that afterwards, at some point, he was asked about that, and his quote was, "That was the end of the road. It was the end of my dream. It was over." And I know it's a cliche, but sports is a metaphor for life. Many times. And I wondered if sports as a metaphor for life was in your mind in leading up to writing the book.
Writing the book, I don't know if I was being that philosophical about it in the early stages. As I got into it more, I think definitely that started to emerge. And by the way, this thing about getting your head banged up a lot, it probably explains a lot to my former colleagues. I couldn't help it, okay?
So, how long would you say you were thinking about writing this book before you actually started writing?
I'll bet it was floating around in my head for, I don't know, 10 years, maybe more, but just vaguely, like, someday maybe I'd like to try to tell that story. But I think being retired maybe was what motivated me to get more serious about it and give it a try.
Right. And I know you said a little bit about this already, but describe your thoughts about making it fiction versus nonfiction.
Yeah, I did.
You told me before about the line, the guy who wrote Friday Night Lights, what happened to him.
Yes, exactly. I knew I wanted it to be fiction, but when you're writing in the first person, the narrator is telling the story, and the only thing the reader knows is what the narrator sees or hears, and so it's hard to divorce the narrator from the author, and especially when people know you and they read some of this stuff and they recognize the place, or they think, hey, maybe is this me? You know, you're talking about me here. But the thing about it was, a friend of mine read some of the early draft, and he said to me one time, we were talking on the phone, I think it was, he said, hey, you better be careful. I said, well, yeah, what do you mean? He said, well, I think what he was saying was, I don't want to see myself in here in some, unfavorable light. And he said, did you ever read Friday Night Lights? And I said, oh yeah. He said, well, I just got a copy of the second edition of this thing. And he says the author has this foreword in there where he talks about going out to Odessa, Texas, where the book was about. This was not a fiction book. This was actually a nonfiction book. But he went out to, it was Bissinger was the author. He went to Odessa to give a book talk, and he was met with some real hostility because the people in that town didn't like what he had said in the book about them and their town and some of their attitudes and their relationships with diversity and all kinds of stuff. So it was a good warning, and I thought, well, yeah, and be careful how you state things, but you also want to be, if you're writing about a period in time, you want it to sound authentic. You want it to be true to the time. You don't want to just whitewash everything and gloss over it.
Yeah. Another thing, when we were talking a few weeks ago, you talked a lot about the blue-collar aspect of growing up there, and I said something about the movie The Deer Hunter, and you said that it was running through your mind a lot.
Yeah, definitely. It was an industrial town at a time when the industries were still going pretty strong. A lot of pollution, unions, a lot of conflict between unions and management. Not too many years after that, things started to decline, companies shutting down, moving out. But we were still, we were not Rust Belt yet at that point. We were heading toward Rust Belt, I guess. But yeah, the whole idea that atmosphere in that Deer Hunter movie, that certainly was going through my head.
Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to read an extended excerpt here from the book, and then a couple questions about that afterward. Just for something to say, I asked Tony what he did at Cooper Chemical. We really got an earful. I usually work in the resin room, he said. That's where they mix up this compound in huge kettles, like maybe 7 feet tall and 7 feet wide. Whatever they put in there gets heated and cooked and stirred by a big blade inside the kettle that rotates around and mixes the stuff until it looks like some kind of thick, shiny red goop. When a batch of this stuff is done cooking, they call a few guys over to the kettle. Each guy gets a short shovel. There's a ramp that runs from the big concrete floor right up under the bottom of the kettle. You run up the ramp with your shovel and put it under the kettle. The guy in charge turns a lever and the hatch cover flops open and the red stuff starts coming out. You swirl the stuff onto your shovel and it looks like a soft serve ice cream cone. Once you get a shovel full of the stuff, you run back and let another guy in. He sticks his shovel under the hatch and gets a load just like you did. You run down the ramp out onto the concrete floor, slide the goop off your shovel onto the floor, and then start stomping on it. If you don't stomp it out like that, it will swell up and explode. You keep doing this until the kettle is empty and all the red stuff has been stomped out and flattened. When it's cool, it gets hard and solid, and you take a sledgehammer and smash the stuff into chunks. You shovel the chunks into large cardboard drums, and a forklift picks them up. Where the stuff goes from there, I have no idea. While you're doing all this, the kettle is slowly cooling down. Once it cools down just enough so that it won't fry your skin if you touch it, Some lucky bastard gets to climb down inside the damn thing through the hatch in the cover. Why do you have to get into the kettle? Because you have to chisel off all the resin that's dried on the inside, and then you shove that down through the bottom hatch hole. Nothing goes to waste. So you squeeze your ass down through the hatch with your chisel and start chipping and scraping the resin off the walls of the kettle, and the damn agitator is still hotter than hell. You have to balance yourself with 1 foot on the curved wall of the kettle and 1 foot on the agitator, and you're sweating your ass off, and who knows what kind of poisonous shit you're breathing in there. That's very descriptive. Like, unless you did that yourself, how would you know how to describe a scene like that?
That is a job I did have, but not in high school. That was a summer job when I was in college. But we knew people who worked at this place. It was actually Durez Plastics. I called it Cooper Chemical in here. And yeah, it was miserable. It was a terrible job. And I did that job. And in fact, in the first draft of it, which I had somebody read, it was even longer than that. That's probably long enough. But I was so fixated on getting all the details of this damn job in there because I thought it was just the worst possible thing you could ask anybody to do. But so that was the real thing. And that particular plant is now leveled. There's nothing there. It's an empty field because there was so much pollution in there. And I've been able to get a free physical every year because I set foot in that place. In fact, they've got an office set up in North Tonawanda that does nothing but give physicals for people who worked at that place. So I thought it was just something that really characterized that time and that type of place. Yeah. So that's why I put so much detail in it.
The other thing about the excerpt that comes out is a little bit about the language.
Right.
And you had some thoughts about that.
Yeah, my first version had a lot of choice words in it. And I had a couple of my friends read it, and take a look at it. One of them is actually here. And some of the feedback I got was like, yeah, we talked like that, but I think, it seems like it's a little overdone. Like maybe there's just too much of it in here. So much so that it's not realistic. It's just overblown. So I took that to heart and did lots of edits and tried to be more judicious about using that kind of language. But I mean, like I said, it was language we used, but I wanted to make it realistic, and I was getting feedback that said you're overdoing it. So that was an author thing I learned.
So you had this story running around your head for 10-ish years, you said. So what was the point where you're like, I'm going to sit down and start actually writing the book?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wanted this to, actually I was keeping this secret because I didn't want anybody to know I was trying it in case I failed. I thought I probably would. So I didn't tell anybody I was working on it, and I didn't even put it in my journal. I keep this silly daily journal of mundane events that occur in my life. And I looked back at my journal, and I couldn't really find I knew I'd started it before such and such a date where the first mention of it was, but I didn't even, I guess, acknowledge to myself that I was trying to write a book. I don't know what you asked me when. I think I probably worked on
you
it.
thank your wife in the acknowledgments. Did she say, Jeff, you need to actually start writing this instead of just talking about it all the time?
Well, she liked me to be working on it, yeah. She was always very fond of it when I was working on it and not bothering her. I
think just to interrupt,
sure.
One thing we should consider in the future, besides having author visits, are maybe spouses of author visits, because those might be more interesting talks.
Yeah, I think you're right. Alice is here, and actually she read this thing, 4 or 5 times. We went through it after we had it read by somebody else and started to do edits and then the proofreading, and you go through it and you think you caught everything, and one more time through and you still find some more stuff. It was really a learning experience, I'll tell you.
So I'm curious always with authors about your writing style. I mean, some people like to write late at night. Some people like to do it first thing in the morning. Some people, I see this all the time at the library. Some people will sit down, open up their computer, and start working. Other people open up their computer, then they get their drink out. Then they get their snacks out. then they get their phone out, then they go to the bathroom, then they adjust their chair. It takes 15 minutes before they start doing anything. So did you have a routine, like at this time of day, I'm going to write for this long a time or make myself do it?
No, I really didn't. I think I went in kind of spurts. You know, if I had something that was working and I was trying to get to the next scene, I developed these different scenes. But if I thought of something I wanted to put in there, but didn't know where it would fit, I'd actually write up an outline of the scene and just put it aside, you know. And then when I felt like I knew where that fit, maybe I'd get inspired and sit down and write a couple chapters, and that would be part of it. Alice likes to go to play the slot machines once in a while. And when she was playing slots, I'd be out, especially in Florida, be outside, nice weather, with my laptop, writing my book. So she's all in favor of me writing another book.
And so did you have a lot of note cards, or did you just try and keep one long thing going on the computer, or how did you? And you talked about not getting mixed up, like this character already did this in this earlier chapter, so I can't.
Right. I started a notebook, a 3-ring notebook, and I had stuff both hard copy and on the computer. A lot of times I would do something, I'd write a scene on the computer, and then I'd print it off and slip it in the notebook so I can kind of manipulate it around. I had these things I called scenes, and then I had what I called a plot outline, which was a little different from the scenes. It was more like the chronological thing as it was going. And even when I started actually writing it and getting beyond the concepts, I had little chapter synopses in the beginning of each chapter, because I would kind of forget what I didn't want to have to reread the whole damn chapter, you know. So okay, this is what this chapter is about, and it helped me to keep things moving. And the first time I sent it to somebody to actually, give me a kind of a review of it, I left those in there, and the person said that was actually kind of helpful. And I did some research. I wanted to know about lawsuits, and when you have an injury, and workers' comp. I didn't know a whole lot about that. I needed to refresh my memory about Vietnam, what was happening at that time with the Vietnam War progressing. So there was like a hodgepodge of stuff, and but I kept it all in one notebook, which I've still got. And some of the stuff that I put in there, I never got used. I had pages where I had the characters listed, because again, I had to keep track. I couldn't keep track of my own characters sometimes. It was like, okay, this is this guy, and this is his sister, and this is his older brother, and this is his mother's name. I had to keep track of all that stuff so you didn't contradict yourself or write something that conflicted with an earlier chapter.
And you mentioned war. You had a lot of things in there, kind of very difficult family dynamics things with war, religion, drinking, gambling, violence. So if they weren't your experiences yourself, how did you feel a comfort level of coming up with writing about those kind of heavy topics?
I don't know if other authors experienced this or not, but as a novice, I did have some problems with that, because, as I said, the narrator is sort of me, but not really. I don't want it to be an autobiography or a memoir. So certain things are true. My neighborhood was full of a bunch of German Lutherans. Like we called it it was called Martinsville, where I grew up. I couldn't call it Martinsville or Martin Luther, so I came up with Wittenberg, because Martin Luther put his theses on the church door in Wittenberg, so that was the neighborhood in the book with all the Lutherans. And like I said, I didn't really want it to be reflecting myself. So, for example, the narrator in the book has a brother and a sister. His father's got some drinking problems and gambling. My dad was a good guy. He had a small business. He actually died when I was in high school. So when I'm writing about the narrator's father being a drunk, and I thought, oh, should I really do this? I mean, is this like dishonoring my dad? I really struggled with that a little bit. Then I thought, well, no, wait a minute, it's a novel. Come on, you're telling everybody else it's a novel. Tell yourself it's a novel, and get over it. So that was an issue at some points, and I think eventually I did sort of get over it. It's, you're writing about stuff, you're making it up because you want to make a good story, you want to make an interesting story. And it's not all about what you did, it's kind of like the stuff that you experienced.
And how, when you were writing it, when you're going back and forth, how do you stop yourself and just always like, well, I could add one more sentence here or put in another word there, make it a little better, a little clearer? Like,
yeah.
How do you know when you're done, I guess is what I'm getting at.
For some reason, I didn't have as much of an issue with that as I thought I might. I didn't do a lot of major rewrites. And maybe I was just lazy. That was good. That was good enough. Sounds pretty good to me. But that's kind of the way it was. I wrote it as a first-person narrator who was telling a pretty straightforward story. I wasn't getting into a lot of elaborate descriptions about what the climate was like or how the sky looked. There's some of that, but it was mainly just kind of a person talking about what happened back then. But there was an interesting aspect to that too, because when you do that, at some points the narrator is obviously an older person looking back at what he did. But then there are other parts where the conversations and the language that you use sounds more like a kid. And I discovered you got to be careful that you pay attention to that, because otherwise, the reader's not going to know, well, who's talking here? What I mean? But basically, this is somebody looking back. I did have a whole period of time when I was trying to figure out to myself, well, where is he looking back from? Is he looking back from 1990? Or from 2000, or from 2022? Is this narrator 74 years old, or is the narrator 50 years old? And it kind of makes a difference. Yeah. I never really did resolve it. But I thought
that may
about
depend on whether you want to write a sequel or not, I guess.
Right.
So you finished the book. You said you sent it off to several different people to read it and such. And then at some point it comes, all right, I'm going to get this thing published, and you've got a number of thoughts about that. So you want to get a book published, let's send it off to Random House or one of the big boys,
yeah.
Right? And
well, once again, I just had to do a lot of Googling and research. How do you do this? Where do you go with your great American novel? And what I was learning was pretty much, hey, sending it to a major publisher just cold, basically forget it. But if you can get an agent interested in it, and the agent can, send it off to a publisher, then maybe you got to check. But just getting an agent is not a given. So I found a website called Query Tracker, where it lists all kinds of literary agents, and it kind of gives their specialties, and it tells you what they want. So I clicked on one, and okay, this person wants you to send a synopsis, a little biography, wants you to send the first 3 chapters, ask for a few other things. And so I decided I was going to try that, and I found maybe a dozen agents that kind of wanted the same stuff, and they wanted it to come through their own little template on the web. You fill it out, mail. It's easy. You don't have to type. You don't have to print stuff and send it. I think I got 6 replies, and then they were all, oh, hey, thanks for sending this to me. It's not exactly what I'm looking for right now. So I'm thinking, well, I can keep doing this, perhaps forever, or I could try to do it myself. There's Amazon KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing. If you want to get into formatting it and just do it totally on your own, you can do it. You can upload it to them, and they'll put it out there and sell it. But it was beyond my technical capabilities, so what I wound up doing is sending it to a place called Mission Point Press. I called this guy because another person here in Fort Wayne had used this publisher, kind of a hybrid publisher. They're self-publishing, but they do have marketing and so forth. So I called the guy and told him.
This is John Schoaf, right?
Oh, John Schoaf referred me to this Mission Point Press up in Michigan. And I spoke to the guy, and he told me, yeah, send it to me. See what you got. And he got back to me right away. He said, this actually is pretty good. And he said, I don't think it really needs too much in the way of a deep edit. I'd recommend you have somebody read it and give you kind of an evaluative feedback, which I did. Cost some more money. But that's the person who told me to shorten up this, description of the chemical plant, and also gave me some thoughts about. Our town was very. I guess the only word to use is racist. Didn't see we had no black people in our town, and I was trying to be honest about that and describe it, and you have to think about the best way to express that. So anyway, that was helpful, and so I made some revisions and decided to go with these people, this Mission Point Press, and then I sent them the total manuscript, had a couple of revisions back and forth, and then they format the whole thing, and they walk you through it, and you pay them a fee to do that, and then it's available on Amazon. Mission Point also makes it available through Ingram, and you have to said, bookstores and libraries don't particularly like to buy stuff from Amazon, so having it available on Ingram is a good thing. And then Mission Point will also sell it to bookstores or whatever if you want to buy direct from them. So.
In the acknowledgments, you mentioned Tanya and Sarah from Mission Point. Who were they and what did they do?
Tanya was I guess, my project manager. She walked me through how to do all this stuff and did a whole lot for me. And then Sarah was she did the cover design and helped me with that kind of stuff, the layout.
And how long from the start to finish of working with Mission Press before you got to the finished product?
I think they told me initially it's normally about a 6-month process, but it didn't take quite that long. I think from the time I started working with them to the time it really was available, maybe 4 months.
Yeah. Now, you said earlier that you didn't think it was worthwhile, almost even sending something cold to the big publisher. But why not? I mean,
yeah, I could have.
If a dirty little secret of library world, if we went upstairs and walked around the fiction department, we'd find a lot of books that are not that well written.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just true. And so, there's someone there who would be assigned to read your book, I assume, if they got it. And
well, like I said, I never tried it, and I based the decision on things I read through my Googling, and mostly what I was reading was. You can send it to them, it'll go from the desk into the wastebasket, and you're not even going to acknowledge that they got it. So if that's not true, then I probably should have given that a try. But even the experience with the agents kind of confirmed that it's kind of hit or miss. I have seen things that sometimes a self-published author can interest the publisher after the fact. Right. And then they'll reissue it. But I'm not really looking to be a John Grisham or anything.
I have a couple other questions, but anything else about writing the book or publishing that you wanted to mention?
No, I think I covered that pretty much.
So, if Yankee Stadium is the house that Ruth built, I guess we're sitting in the house that Jeff Krull built, and I know that. That I would think that you have a lot of gratification, if not vindication, about what's happening in downtown Fort Wayne the last few years after this building was built, and there was a lot of pushback initially about that. But was that hard not to take that personally at the time, or you're sure that this is the right thing to do and that?
I
saved the day.
I got big files of newspapers. It was heavily covered. I mean, that was a big issue. I remember saying at the time that what Fort Wayne needed to see was a construction crane or two downtown, just to symbolize that something positive was happening. And, you know, like anything else, you put out a pretty aggressive, ambitious plan. You're going to get a lot of people who just, we don't need that. What do we need that for? We got a big library. Everything's fine. That's kind of hard to argue that. So, yeah, okay, if that's what you want, you've got it. It's not terrible. But if you want something better, and if you want to continue to grow, and at that point, of course, we were really interested in continuing to, you know, build a book collection and all that stuff. And the branches were, you know, really getting old. So anyway, we took the attitude that the plan we'd put together made a lot of sense, that it was responsible, that we involved a lot of local talent. Every branch had its own local architect to design it. And I remember there was one newspaper article where somebody asked me, well, what's plan B? And I said, and I was being truthful. I said, there is no plan B. I mean, either we do this or you got what you got. And that's not a plan. You know, falling back to what you have is not plan B. That's the status quo. So we said, this is the plan, and we think it makes sense. We think it was well thought out, and we're just going to push it. And we did a good job of organizing. At that point, it was, you know, petition signing. It wasn't voting. You had to take your petition out, get people to sign in favor of it, people to sign against it. And it was a well, I mean, we had opposition. But, no, it was a major win. Yeah. And a lot of people here were part of that.
So more broadly, just with the library world in general, I know you've been retired for a while, but I'm sure you still follow things. What do you see as the main challenges and opportunities for libraries these days, especially coming out kind of a post-COVID era?
Well, I think we were trying to promote the library as the, you know, at that time we called it the third place? You know, you got work, you got home, you got a third place. Now, COVID's messed that up, of course, because you couldn't really be there. But I think having the library be recognized as an independent, neutral source of reliable information in all kinds of formats, you can learn things there, and nobody's going to bother you, ask you what you're doing here. You're welcome. I think that's a basic principle of libraries that is still being promoted and is at the core of what we need to do.
Great. Well, that's all the questions I have for Jeff. If any of you have questions, we have microphones here, and Leanne will hand you the mic if you'd rather not step up to the mic. There's the man.
Absolutely.
How did the book in the book? Do you do research on football stuff, Jeff? Do you do research on the book on the football stuff when you write the book, Jeff?
Well,
the question. We were going to repeat the questions just for the recording. Did Jeff research?
Did you do research
football?
on football when you write the book?
Tony's asking, did I do research on football while I was writing the book? To some extent, I had to. A lot of it I relied pretty much on my own experience. The single wing thing, I think maybe I overstated a little bit, although looking back, not very many schools were using that offense, and that was kind of central to my plot. You know, that this coach was tied to this, and he was being criticized for it, and he was starting to lose games, and his reputation was starting to come into question a little bit. So a lot of the plot was not so much research, but just personal experience and thinking through where this plot thread was going.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, down here.
So I was surprised to learn, Jeff, that you not only played football in high school, but then you went on to Williams and played football. How long did that last? And then the second part of the question is, of your friends, how many of those went on and played college ball?
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to be a quarterback, and I was going to be the starting quarterback my senior year in high school. But that was the summer. That's a couple of bad things happened. My dad passed away, and a month after that, I had a ruptured appendix. And poor mom, she really went through it. But the appendix pretty much knocked me out. I mean, I did recover, and I was able to go back to practice. But you know, by that time, I was not going to be the starting quarterback. I still wanted to play football. So I did go to a small college. It was all men at the time, Williams College in Massachusetts. Very big rivalry they had up there with Williams College, Amherst College, Wesleyan University. And I tried out for quarterback, but you know, I hadn't played quarterback. I had never been a starting quarterback. So I really couldn't compete with the other guys who were playing quarterback. So I said, I don't care. I'll do anything, you know. So I wound up playing defensive end, which is quite a big switch. Although, you know, being a blocking back kind of gives you a little bit of experience for that. So I played defensive end on the freshman college team, and then on the varsity, I was a second stringer. A good friend of mine was the first stringer. He racked up his knee. I got to play. I finished out the season. Then, junior year, I'm really going to go for it. Well, our coach left, went to Columbia. For some reason, the college hired a guy from Ohio State who did not get the Division III, the whole environment. So I couldn't deal with that. I mean, it was like, I remember one time a guy came to practice and said, Coach, I'm going to be late tomorrow because I got a lab. Well, he blew his cork. You know, a lab? What's a lab? You know, get down here and play ball. You know? So 2 years, and I retired to the bleachers, had a couple beers. Oh, okay. One guy went to Princeton and played and then got hurt. Another guy went to Brockport State College in New York, and I can't remember how long he played, but he got hurt too. He got some kind of an injury. So none of us played 4 years.
Jeff,
Yes,
has
sir.
there been any reaction from your hometown?
Oh yeah, yes. Mm-hmm. You got to shut me off here.
Okay.
No, one thing I'll tell you that was really funny. In the book, there's the mention of a name, Sarkovitz. I don't know how many people have read the book, but Coach says, win this one for Sarkovitz. Except nobody knew who the hell Sarkovitz was. I mean, Coach came up with. Now, I got that from my older cousin who played football, and it actually happened at our school. So I put that in the book. I get a text message from a guy who didn't play football, but I played tennis and basketball with him, and his name was Bob Kajowski. He says, oh, man, I read the book. I really loved it. It was great. And he says, I gave a copy to Tom Sarkovitz. I said, what? And I'm thinking, wait a minute. Do I know Tom? This name was not, I wasn't thinking of a person when I put that in there. I was thinking of what my cousin had said. And I got back to Bob Kajowski. I said, Bobby, do I know Tom Sarkovitz? And he says, and is he going to be offended that I put the name in there? And he says, oh, he's not going to be offended. He said, maybe you didn't know him. He went to Bishop Gibbons, it was a Catholic high school. So he didn't play for NT. And the same day that I get a call from Tom Sarkovitz. He says, oh, Jeff, I never met you, but I read the book. I thought it was great. And so this kind of stuff has been happening with the hometown folks. They're reading it and they recognize the place. And now, was that Pee-wee's? Yeah. So that's been a fun part of it.
Okay. There's a lot of unanswered things at the end of the book. Is there going to be a sequel?
Oh boy. That's a really good question. I was trying to figure out a way. Yeah, this was interesting. One of the things I kept looking at as I did this was the word count. How many words do I have? Because I'd Google it. How many words does a novel have to be, you know? And, well, 80 to 100,000 is like for what you want for a first novel, let's say, unless you're John Grisham and you can blather on forever. So at first I'm thinking, oh, I'm never going to get enough in here for a novel. And then as I keep going, I think, hey, man, this is getting a little bit too long. You know, I got to wrap this thing up. So I've got these plot threads going through there, and I'm trying to figure out a way to tie them all up. And I finally concluded that in order to do that, it would take too long. And I didn't want it to be implausible, because there was one plot thread about a lawsuit. I'm thinking, this lawsuit could drag on for years. I don't want to make a phony, resolution to this thing where the good guys come out on top and all that stuff. So that led me finally to decide to let these things go. And the thinking was, okay, this is life. You know, you're living, things are going on, and then the big event happens, the big game, and you win the damn thing. And you don't care what else is going on right then. You know, it's going to resolve itself someday, but right now all you care about is that you won that game. So that satisfied myself to say, yeah, I can let it sit there. Now, do I want to do a sequel? I'm really, really undecided about that. Some of the plot endings that I contemplated had things happening to the different guys. You know, like one guy got killed in Vietnam. One guy went to Canada, got killed in a car accident. The 6 guys in that story are roughly based on me and 5 good pals. One of them's right out there tonight in the audience. He came all the way down from Detroit to hear me blather. I've already blathered to him before about this. But I just, I just decided I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. So if I had a plausible way to end it without wrapping it up, that's what I went with.
Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Lisa.
I just have a quick question. Did you use writing software like Scrivener or just Word, or how did you type
I just
it?
used Word.
Okay.
Word created a real interesting typo problem, because there are a lot of phrases in that book about sock it or take it to them. You know, you got to nail them. And, the apostrophe goes that way. And when you type that in Word, it goes this way. It's thinking it's the beginning quotation mark. It was all through the whole book. And so we corrected that. But maybe there's a better program to use than Word. Probably is.
Jeff, I've enjoyed your stories about people from the hometown, getting in touch with you. And other than that, what has been the most fun? What have you enjoyed most about the process?
I think the thing I've enjoyed the most is hearing feedback. And a lot of it was from, this is Tom King out here. I'm not telling you who he is in the book. But Tommy read the whole thing, gave me some feedback. Teresa, Tom's wife, same thing. I got some feedback. Some of that feedback from friends like that led me to tone down the, profanity a bit. There's still enough of it in there. But I really valued that, and I found that really interesting and rewarding to get people to tell me what they thought of it as they were going through it.
Anyone else?
Okay, so the subject matter that I like to read is mainly mysteries. So I read this book simply because you wrote it.
Okay.
And I did enjoy it, and I thought you wrote well. I, like a couple other people, was left hanging by a couple of things, and one was the lawsuit, and I was like,
Right.
oh, I wonder what happened there with that character. And the other one, at the end of the story, and it sounds like from what you said, this was not true, because you said, oh, I'm really glad you won your big game too, obviously. But you said at the end that, okay, so, don't know what happened to all these friends. I'm thinking, well, this is a book about friendship. How could he have just divorced himself from those people that he was so close to? So that was sort of like, yeah, I don't know.
So how can
So,
I leave the...
so a sequel would be good, is what I'm saying.
Okay, all right. Proposing a sequel. Yeah, I know what you're saying, that there is hanging, and other people have said that too. I might try it. I'm afraid to. I mean, frankly, I'm afraid to, because I might mess it up. Okay. Write a mystery or something. I was thinking about writing a book about old coots down in Florida. But you've got Carl Hyacin. Well, he's Florida, but I could do a different kind of a Florida book. Sir. Right.
Jeff, where will you be getting your advice for movie rights?
Well, I didn't hear from a college friend of mine who I have talked to him about it, and I kind of kidded him about it. He did the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle thing, and he still has some kind of a studio in Orlando called Skydog Productions. So I sent him a copy of the book, and I said, Kim, get somebody to write the screenplay, and then get David Strathairn. You know that name? He was in my college class. He's done a lot of films. I said, get him to play Coach Hellwig, because he would be good at it. But I didn't hear anything back from Kim. He's either working on it diligently or he's ignoring me.
Anyone else? So Lisa Worrell from the Friends of the Library is going to make a few marks, and then please join us in the Jeff Krull Gallery.
Hi, I'm Lisa Worrell, and I am a member of the Friends of the Library. Until April, I worked for Allen County Public Library, and I really wanted to make sure I could continue to be involved even after I left. I worked for ACPL for 20 years, 13 of which were under Jeff's leadership, and it really does feel like a homecoming, and I'm so glad that you're here tonight and that you guys all came out to see it. So thank you for attending. I hope you will join us in the Krull Gallery upstairs, which is right across from the Children's Department, for a reception. And I want to thank Jeff, who generously is donating the proceeds of the sale of his book tonight to the Friends of the Library so we can continue to do good things to support this wonderful institution. I hope you'll consider joining the Friends of the Library. Check out the new website at supportacpl.org. And what else? Yeah, I think just come on up to the Krull Gallery. We'll be in the grand hallway for a little bit longer too if anybody wants to pick up a book or join the Friends of the Library, and we'll also move that stuff down to the gallery as well. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Jeff.
Production facilities provided by Access Fort Wayne. Learn more under the Explore tab at acpl.info.